12 Worst Nymphomaniacs from Hollywood Golden Age. In Hollywood, pushing limits is almost second nature. Desire often tempts stars to reach for more fame, more thrill, more indulgence. But some actresses of the golden era went far beyond what anyone thought possible. They shattered boundaries and chased their physical cravings with a boldness that shocked even their peers. In this video, we'll uncover the hidden stories of women who lived without restraint. Names you know, faces that seemed so graceful and ordinary, yet behind the spotlight, they were living wild, uninhibited lives that might just leave you speechless. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford's reputation as a voracious lover was fueled not only by her 4 marriages but also by countless rumored affairs with both men and women. Whispers in Hollywood claimed she had slept her way to the top, a practice not uncommon among ambitious actresses clawing for survival in a ruthless industry. Crawford was famously driven, and her relationships were often seen as deliberate steps in a carefully calculated climb toward stardom. Behind the glamour, she was rumored to have shared beds with some of Hollywood's most powerful men, including MGM mogul Louis B. Mayer, while hushed speculation tied her to women like Barbara Stanwyck and even a young Marilyn Monroe. Her bisexuality was an open secret in the shadows of studio backlots, where insiders described her as insatiable, using sex as both a weapon and a reward. Yet, for all the gossip, Crawford's private escapades were ultimately eclipsed by the persona she built, a fiercely independent, domineering woman who refused to bow to anyone. It was this intoxicating blend of sexual audacity and iron-willed ambition that made her one of Hollywood's most scandalous and enduring figures. To some, her turbulent love life branded her a sex freak by the standards of her time. To others, it made her unforgettable, a star who wielded desire as power and left behind a legacy as provocative as it was legendary. Ava Gardner. Ava Gardner's beauty was the stuff of legend, but it was her ferocious lust for life, her unapologetic hunger for love, sex, and adventure that made her unforgettable. Her romances weren't mere flings, they were storms of passion, jealousy, and reckless abandon. None was more infamous than her affair and later marriage to Frank Sinatra, a union that became Hollywood lore. Their love was explosive, filled with screaming matches, flying fists, and a raw sexual magnetism that seemed to burn hotter than the spotlight itself. Ava never hid from her desires. She once famously quipped, "I like my whiskey old and my men young," a line that captured her bold spirit perfectly. During her years in Spain, she threw herself into fiery affairs with bullfighters, intoxicated by the danger and thrill of their world. Titans like Howard Hughes and Ernest Hemingway were equally spellbound by her untamed spirit and unbridled sexuality, each vying for a piece of her wild heart. What set Gardner apart wasn't just her beauty, but her defiance. At a time when women were punished for stepping outside society's rigid boundaries, she lived with reckless freedom. She loved fiercely, drank deeply, and refused to conform. Ava Gardner wasn't just a star, she was a symbol of sexual liberation, a woman who turned condemnation into legend and left behind a legacy as intoxicating as the life she lived. Lana Turner. Lana Turner's love life was a storm of scandal, but nothing shook Hollywood more than her infamous affair with mobster Johnny Stompanato. Known for his ties to organized crime, Stompanato wasn't just dangerous. He was violently abusive, pulling Turner into a dark, sexually charged relationship that blurred the line between passion and peril. Their toxic romance exploded into front-page headlines when Turner's teenage daughter, Cheryl Crane, stabbed Stompanato to death in a desperate act of protection during one of his brutal outbursts. The shocking incident only cemented Turner's image as Hollywood's queen of scandal. But that was only one chapter. Married 7 times, often to younger men, Turner's relentless pursuit of love and desire became a favorite feast for the tabloids. Each affair, each heartbreak, added fuel to her reputation as a woman consumed by passion. To the public, she was labeled a nympho, a glamorous siren whose beauty, drama, and turbulent romances defined her. Yet behind the headlines and whispered gossip lay deeper emotional struggles, a woman searching for connection in a world that only saw her as a spectacle of excess and desire. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead was one of the rare Golden Age stars who refused to hide behind Hollywood's carefully polished facade. At a time when most actors lived in fear of scandal, Bankhead flaunted her sexuality, her affairs, and her addictions with reckless abandon. She was openly bisexual, brazenly promiscuous, and utterly unapologetic about it. Her wild parties were infamous, filled with drugs, alcohol, and lovers of both sexes. Gossip columns feasted on her exploits, linking her name to countless men and some of the most glamorous women of the era, including Greta Garbo and Marlene Dietrich. Her appetite for danger was legendary. She drank heavily, abused drugs, and burned through life at full speed, earning scandalous labels like sex fiend and nymphomaniac in a society desperate to repress such desires. Yet what made her unforgettable was not the gossip but the defiance. In an age built on silence and shame, Tallulah Bankhead stood tall as a woman who lived loudly, dangerously, and unapologetically, a Hollywood figure both feared and endlessly fascinating. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe's sexual persona wasn't just born, it was engineered by Hollywood, then devoured by the world. Yet behind the shimmering image of the ultimate sex symbol lay a woman desperately searching for love, intimacy, and validation. Her rumored affair with President John F. Kennedy remains one of the most infamous chapters of her life, cementing her as both a fantasy for millions and a dangerous political liability. With her breathy voice and unforgettable allure, immortalized in that seductive Happy Birthday performance, Monroe embodied desire itself. But offstage, her need for connection ran deeper than the glamorous mask suggested. Her marriages to Joe DiMaggio and Arthur Miller, along with whispers of countless high-profile affairs, revealed a heartbreaking pattern, relationships marked by passion, chaos, and self-destruction. Monroe's sexual identity and public image were inseparable. She became a prisoner of the very persona that brought her fame. Beauty, vulnerability, and an insatiable need for affection painted her as a tragic nymphomaniac in the public eye, someone whose hunger for love and validation became both her greatest weapon and her ultimate undoing. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn wasn't just a star of Hollywood's golden age, he was its most notorious sexual adventurer. With his chiseled looks, devil-may-care grin, and swashbuckling screen roles, he became a heartthrob to millions. But it was his wild off-screen life that truly made him infamous. Flynn's obsession with younger women landed him in multiple scandals, the most explosive being his 1942 statutory rape trial, where two teenage girls accused him of assault. Though acquitted, the trial forever branded him as Hollywood's reckless playboy who lived without boundaries. His hedonism knew no limits. Booze, drugs, endless affairs, and reports of public sexual escapades fueled his legend. His estate, known as Mulholland Farm, became ground zero for wild parties where sex, alcohol, and narcotics flowed like water. Flynn himself bragged openly about his conquests, cultivating the image of a man consumed by desire, a Hollywood sex addict with appetites too large to contain. So powerful was his reputation that the phrase, "in like Flynn," entered popular culture as shorthand for effortless sexual success, cementing his place not only as a screen idol but as one of Hollywood's most infamous sinners. Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor's love life was just as legendary as her acting career, bold, scandalous, and impossible to ignore. Though she walked down the aisle 8 times with 7 different men, it was her explosive affair with Richard Burton that truly shook Hollywood to its core. Their chemistry was electric, part passion, part jealousy, and a dangerously obsessive sexual bond that played out under the glare of the world's spotlight. They first locked eyes on the set of Cleopatra, and despite both being married, they ignited one of the most infamous and fiery romances in Hollywood history. Their love was a storm, marked by breakups, reconciliations, and nights blurred by alcohol and desire. But Burton wasn't her only headline-making scandal. From her whirlwind marriage to hotel heir Nicky Hilton, to her affair with Eddie Fisher, the man who left America's sweetheart Debbie Reynolds for her, Taylor lived unapologetically for love, passion, and drama. Branded by critics as a nymphomaniac, she became the embodiment of Hollywood excess, her larger-than-life persona feeding the myth of a woman who could never get enough of romance or men. Vivien Leigh's story, meanwhile, was darker. Her sexuality tangled with her fragile mental health, making her both tragic and magnetic. Her marriage to Laurence Olivier began in fire and betrayal, an illicit love affair that turned into a partnership of intense sexual chemistry and emotional volatility. Yet Leigh's bipolar disorder often drove her into reckless affairs with both men and women, her manic episodes leaving chaos in their wake. Her beauty and allure made her irresistible, but her instability made her dangerous, even to herself. Despite the turmoil, Vivien Leigh remained one of the most desired women of her generation. Her tragic love life, haunted by passion, madness, and broken boundaries, only deepened the legend. Both Taylor and Leigh proved that for Hollywood's brightest stars, love was never gentle. It was fire, obsession, and ultimately, tragedy. Vivien Leigh. Vivien Leigh's sexual history was deeply bound to her struggles with mental health, shaping her as both a tragic and magnetic figure. Her marriage to Laurence Olivier, born out of a scandalous affair while they were each wed to others, was fueled by fiery passion and undeniable chemistry. Yet beneath the glamour, her bipolar disorder often pushed her into impulsive, reckless liaisons beyond the marriage bed. Rumors swirled of affairs with both men and women, each episode heightened during her manic spirals, where sexuality became as uncontrollable as her emotions. Lee's rare blend of fragile vulnerability and intoxicating allure made her dangerously irresistible. Even as her mind unraveled, Hollywood could not look away. She remained one of its most desired stars, her turbulent love life and haunting beauty transforming her into a near-mythic figure, forever caught between brilliance and breakdown. Hedy Lamarr. Hedy Lamarr's allure was impossible to ignore. Her sexuality defined her career from the very beginning. In 1933, her nude scenes in Ecstasy shocked the world, branding her as one of Hollywood's most daring and controversial actresses. Off-screen, her life burned just as brightly. Married 6 times, Hedy's relationships were marked by passion, betrayal, and scandal, and rumors swirled about her affairs with powerful Hollywood men, including mogul Howard Hughes. She became a fixture at the era's wild parties, where experimentation ran rampant and inhibitions were left at the door. But Lamarr wasn't just a beauty, she was a mind ahead of her time. She co-invented frequency-hopping technology, the foundation of today's Wi-Fi. Still, it wasn't her brilliance that captured the headlines, it was her sexuality. To the public, she was less a scientist than a seductress. Her many marriages, her unapologetic independence, and her defiance of traditional gender roles led critics to label her a sex freak. In an era when women were expected to stay silent and submissive, Hedy Lamarr lived loudly, shamelessly, and on her own terms. Ingrid Bergman. In the late 1940s, Ingrid Bergman's love affair with Italian director Roberto Rossellini ignited one of Hollywood's most explosive scandals. At the time, Bergman was married, and when her affair led to the birth of a child out of wedlock, the world erupted in outrage. What might today be seen as a private matter was then considered a moral crime. In fact, the U.S. Senate went so far as to brand her a powerful influence for evil, a shocking condemnation that revealed the era's puritanical fury. To audiences who adored her wholesome on-screen image, Bergman's defiance of societal norms felt like betrayal. Though hardly as notorious as some, her unapologetic embrace of desire was viewed as brazen rebellion. She became a symbol of sexual defiance, a woman who dared to follow her heart, even at the devastating cost of her career, reputation, and the pedestal on which the world had placed her. Joan Blondell. Joan Blondell wasn't just a screen siren with her sultry, street-smart characters. Her off-screen life was just as bold and captivating. Married 3 times, she became a constant target for tabloid headlines, with her romances fueling endless gossip columns. But Blondell refused to conform to Hollywood's rigid expectations of women. She lived on her own terms, openly enjoying passionate affairs with some of the industry's most powerful men. Her razor-sharp wit and undeniable charm only amplified her allure, while her unapologetic sexual independence in a male-dominated industry made her truly stand out. Though she never courted scandal as recklessly as some of her peers, Blondell's fearless embrace of freedom gave her the reputation of a liberated woman, one who refused to be tamed and lived life with daring authenticity. Veronica Lake. Veronica Lake life was a cautionary tale of Hollywood excess fame and tragedy. Lake's seductive femme fatale roles on screen mirrored her troubled personal life. She had multiple failed marriages and struggled with alcoholism, which contributed to her reputation as a difficult and self-destructive figure. Lake's sexual allure was often at the center of her public persona, and her affairs with powerful men in Hollywood were well-known. Lake's life spiraled out of control as her career declined, and her sexual relationships were often seen as part of the downward spiral that eventually led to her demise. Lake's beauty and sexuality were central to her fame, but they also contributed to her undoing as she became a victim of Hollywood's obsession with youth, beauty, and sexual appeal. Each of these stars, whether through their open embrace of sexuality, scandalous affairs, or reputations as insatiable lovers, contributed to Hollywood's legacy of sex and scandal. These actors and actresses became symbols of excess desire, and in many cases tragedy, as their personal lives played out in the public eye, feeding the tabloid machine and furthering their reputations as sex freaks.